Awesome. Hey.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, Mindy.
Hi, Joe.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
It's Mindy's
My
birthday today.
Thank you.
So, Mindy, as the managing editor of TomTom Magazine, we're going to dig into new media brands and the driving and how they're driving the feminist movement. So let's start off with sharing what sparked your interest in building a media company focused on women drummers.
Well, I am a female drummer. So first and foremost, I felt there was a really big lack in representation of female musicians, period, but specifically the drummer. In 2009, when I started the magazine, the media company, the internet was a really poor source for finding articles and visuals based on female drummers. So I started then to create a company that has positive role modeling and actual representation of women and girls that drum.
And what's your distribution? What's your distribution strategy? What's your monetization strategy? How are you building a real business? How are you building a media company?
We distribute TomTom across every possible platform. So that's web and print. We publish digitally to Issue, which is your company. We have social media, everyone, YouTube. So we're basically putting drumming content across every possible platform to try to meet the user where they are. So if the user's at Twitter, if the user's at a punk club, we're throwing live events, we're having in real life conversations, and we're doing all the digital and print to try to basically meet the audience where they are.
And how are you monetizing? What does your monetization look like? How are you doing it? How are you going out there and engaging with the folks that are generating revenue for you?
So we're partnering with sponsors like a typical magazine would, and we're offering them the ability to speak to our audience across all of those platforms that I previously mentioned. We're making sure that our sponsors are aligned with our messaging, so they're ethically and morally sound. They agree with the fact that we feel like women should be in the media represented as we are and not asked to be a certain way. So all of our sponsors, which include Red Bull and Guitar Center and Roland and DW and Moog, and the list goes on, all of the folks who monetize us and give us ad revenue are people we actually believe in, that know who we are, we know them personally, we have relationships with them, and therefore can extend our content to them.
Is the benefit for them in terms of working with you, is there a different benefit working with you than they get from working with other media companies, other kinds of content?
When I'm speaking to a potential advertiser or an existing partner, I think what they love about our company is that we have a genuine and real audience. So our numbers, which we reach 4 million musicians, music lovers per month, is a collection of humans who actually care about music. We have genuine messaging. You can meet us in person like you all are doing now. I'm the CEO and publisher of the company. I think what they're after at the end of the day is the real relationships that we have with our readers.
And that comes out through the content, through the pages, through how you're distributing the content digitally and physically as well, right?
Yeah, through the content, through our events, through our longevity and practice. So since 2009, we've been consistent in our messaging, which I think means a lot to people in this industry. And we've had very little flubs, which in media you can have a lot of.
So often when we think about emerging media companies, one of the first brands that pops up is Vice. And I'm curious how you think about Vice magazine. Are you challenging Vice? Are you approaching this effort with a different kind of model?
So I'm from New York City. The birth of TomTom is New York City. And our offices were like 6 blocks from Vice when they were also a name that people really it wasn't a household name yet. And there were a lot of things that Vice did in the early days that I loved, like free distribution of their magazine and really smart, interesting content geared towards young people that young people actually cared about. But at the same time, they were producing content that was discordant with me and my friends who have maybe more activist notions or like an idealistic worldview. So what I would say is there are parts of Vice that we've borrowed, parts of their model that I love, and parts that I completely disagree with. Some of their more snarky tones and college humor. I'm not as interested in But I do think what they've done and grown into is incredible. And our relationship is really strong still today in that we have some of the same writers, a lot of the same content, especially with their Noisy handle and Broadly handle. But I'd love to see them care a bit more about their messaging and not just try to get the story out first or through a kind of like snarky lens.
So they started off with a free magazine that was distributed in multiple countries around the world. They evolved that into advertising and video and ultimately their own television channel. Are you building that model? Are you approaching media only from the confines of a magazine?
Oh no, we are also a female drumming contest. Hit Like a Girl is something we started in 2010. We're growing our content to broader than just drums. Our tagline is drummers, music, and feminism. And we'll be expanding into stories about dangerous and powerful women in general. In the future,
Like who? Anyone you can give us a sneak
Madeleine
peek?
Albright, for example, happens to be an incredible politician and also a drummer. So we know all these accidental, powerful figures who are also secret drummers. But we'll also move into the arena of all the powerful women that you can think of off the top of your head whose stories aren't told enough. And yeah, video, events, conferences like this one, we're moving into every possible terrain and growing in every which way we can.
I want to dig into that a little bit more on the powerful women, and you said they're secretly drummers too. One of the things also is that drumming is a form of creativity. So how do you see the relationship between creativity and powerful women, and how they're engaging both the power that people are seeing on a regular basis and sort of the creativity that may be hidden or may not be as obvious?
Well, there's an interesting byproduct to when anyone is being held back. So when anyone doesn't have as much privilege as the next person, and I'll use gender as an example because that's my forte. So women have often had to be more creative in every industry because there's roadblocks in your way. So if there's a roadblock, what are you going to do? You're going to figure out how to get over that wall or around the wall or under the wall. And that sort of forced creativity has ended up being an incredible asset that I think most women have, is having to think outside the box to get what we want, or having to have multiple options at any given moment to get what we want. So often people will say what I think the difference between a female and a male drummer is, and obviously I don't think there is a difference between female and male drummers. But what I do think is in socialization, we've had to be more creative once we get to the kit. We've had to figure something out or 25 things out to get there. And by the time we're there, there's a good chance we're more open. And or we're at the point where we say, we don't give a fuck. I got here, and now you're going to listen to me. And it's going to sound however it wants to. So I do think that people who've had to experience hurdles, most women, if not all, the end result is being more creative.
What are a couple of those extra creative things that you've done, the hurdles, a hurdle or two that you feel you've had to jump in building this business?
I would say starting a magazine about female drummers is pretty creative. Like, that is an exact derivative of having had an incredibly difficult drumming career, one in which I was faced with regularly being asked if I'm the drummer or if I want a drum lesson before I sit down at the kit, or if I'm like loading in for my boyfriend or whatever. So a collection of all of those, of my own personal stories, led me to creating this magazine to then hold the stories for everyone else to ideally never have to live them again, right? So that would be one example of creativity. But every day I'm trying to grow our company by being as creative as possible and moving around what I think people assume about us, about me, about females.
What advice would you give to a woman building a media business in today's environment, particularly in light of all the news that's been happening around Harvey Weinstein and all the information that's starting to come out there?
Advice I would give to a woman in media right now is that there's a really there's an opening right now to be loud and clear about what we need and what we're feeling. There's a lot of healing, so a lot of women can't actually be loud. And so if you can, being really loud and clear, demanding, articulate, leaning in, joining the conversation, not shying away, now's the time to do it because there's some space. We're all aware that there's dangers. There were always dangers. Now people are talking about them very openly. So I would say if you're starting a media company or if you're running one, seize the opportunity to be very clear and make sure that our allies and the folks who are not our allies know what we expect of them and what we'd like to see.
What impact do you want to have on the world with your company, with your product, with your content, and how do you know it's happening?
I'd like to create better media, and I'd like to have a domino effect. And ideally, the media that's out there and the new creators coming on in would also feel like there's A, a possibility to monetize an ethically and morally based media company, and B, that you have the obligation to. It's the public service that you put out good media that represents all of us, that doesn't instill insecurity or fears. Am I good enough? Am I a celebrity enough or whatever? So I'd hope that as we grow, we influence existing media, and ideally we get to grow to become a household name that's producing really great content for people and great role models.
Is there a household name in a media company about women who drum?
TomTom.
And we're
Thanks. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I mean, we're the only one, so does that count?
what are the additional elements that you want to be building as you think about the mission of TomTom?
I mean, I'd love to encourage people to be who they want to be in whatever way possible. If that means that we're moving into conferences or clothing or events or whatever it is that gives people permission to feel completely confident being a beginner and intermediate and advanced at whatever it is they want to do. Ideally, the words currently female drummer are a metaphor for anyone who's maybe a male chef or whatever people don't normally pair it together. I'd like for female drummer to be the metaphor for that. And I want for us to grow into wherever we can. Yeah.
I love that.
Thanks.
One of the things I love about TomTom is you have a real global audience. And you've got readers and folks that you're writing about all over the world. I'm curious, how do you transcend local culture, local norms, local ways of operating in terms of putting out your product and the content?
Well, within the magazine, we cover drummers globally. That's always been our MO. So I'd like to think that TomTom is, while it's New York City's female drummer magazine, it's equally Sao Paulo's female drummer magazine, Melbourne's female drummer magazine, and Lisbon's female drummer magazine. Yeah.
Awesome. And ultimately, I think we all know that the best media companies are those that are igniting aliveness and are really connecting people in their hearts. So happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Joe. Check TomTom out on Issue if you get a chance. Is there? Yes.
TomTom Magazine's Lisbon Drummers.